17 years old, bruised face hidden beneath a worn hoodie, Dylan Brooks pushed open the heavy door of Iron Angels Motorcycle Club in Riverside, California. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garage, where chrome and steel gleamed like promises of freedom. But Dylan wasn't there for motorcycles or rebellion. "I'm not asking for charity," he said, voice steady despite the purple mark spreading across his left cheek. "I'm asking for a chance to prove I'm worth something." The entire clubhouse fell silent. Pool cues froze mid-strike. Conversations died. Beer bottles paused halfway to lips. Marcus "Tank" Rodriguez, the club's sergeant-at-arms, looked up from the Harley engine he was rebuilding. At 45, Tank had served 2 tours in Afghanistan, seen enough broken kids to recognize the particular kind of damage that came from surviving what no teenager should endure. This wasn't desperation in Dylan's voice. This was determination wrapped around shame, held together with the quiet strength that only came from learning to stand when the world kept knocking you down. "What kind of work you looking for?" Tank asked, setting down his wrench. His voice carried the gravel of a man who'd learned to read people like roadmaps, understanding which paths led to safety and which ones ended in wreckage. Sweeping, organizing parts, cleaning tools. Whatever needs doing, after school, weekends, whatever you got. Dylan's hands stayed buried in his hoodie pockets, but his eyes met Tank's without flinching. "I won't steal, I won't cause trouble, and I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired." Bobby "Big Bear" Williams emerged from the back office, his massive frame filling the doorway. At 58, the club's vice president had buried too many sons, lost his own boy to the foster system's failures 8 years ago. When he looked at Dylan, he saw echoes of every kid who'd asked for help that never came. The garage smelled like motor oil and possibility. Tools hung on pegboards with military precision. Chrome reflected afternoon sunlight. And somewhere in the distance, Route 66 hummed with the eternal song of journeys yet to be taken. "You live around here," Tank continued his informal interview, though every instinct told him this kid needed more than just a job. "Oak Street, the yellow house with the chain-link fence." Dylan's voice caught slightly in on the address, and Tank noticed the way his shoulders tensed when he mentioned home. Tank knew that house, foster placement, Tom and Susan Martinez. The place had a reputation in law enforcement circles, though nothing official ever stuck. Kids came and went. Social workers visited on schedules predictable enough that any smart parent could prepare. Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, 3 hours each shift, $10 an hour. Our Tank made the decision that would change everything. You show up on time, work hard, and keep your word. Think you can handle that. For the first time since entering, Dylan's careful mask slipped. Something fragile and desperate flickered behind his eyes before he locked it away again. "Yes, sir. When do I start?" "Tomorrow, 4 o'clock sharp." As Dylan walked toward the door, Tank called out once more. That bruise didn't come from any bike accident. It wasn't a question. Dylan's hand paused on the door handle. His jaw tightened, and for a moment, the teenager's facade cracked to reveal something much older underneath. "Tomorrow," he repeated quietly. 4 o'clock? The door closed behind him, and the clubhouse slowly returned to life. But Tank remained motionless, watching through the window as the small figure in the oversized hoodie disappeared down the street. Big Bear moved to stand beside him, both men understanding that sometimes salvation arrived in the form of a desperate teenager asking for work instead of handouts. Outside, Dylan walked home knowing he'd just thrown himself a lifeline. He didn't know if it would hold, but for the first time in years, he had something that felt dangerously close to hope. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is ask for a chance to prove yourself. Subscribe to Heart Stories for more real-life journeys of courage and the power of chosen family. Tuesday arrived with Dylan standing outside Iron Angels 20 minutes early, the same faded hoodie hanging loose on his thin frame. He'd walked the 3 miles from Oak Street, partly to save bus fare, but mostly because Movement helped quiet the anxiety clawing at his chest. The morning argument with Tom Martinez still echoed in his ears, along with the sting across his shoulders when he'd mentioned the job. Tank opened the garage door before Dylan could knock. Eager, good trait in a worker. He led Dylan through the main room where leather-clad men nursed coffee and planned the day's rides, into the massive garage that smelled like gasoline and decades of honest work. "This is Jake Thompson," Tank said, nodding toward a wiry man in his 40s whose forearms were covered in faded military tattoos. "We call him Wrench. He'll teach you the basics." Jake looked up from the Harley engine he was rebuilding, studying Dylan with eyes that had seen too much hardship and not enough kindness. "Kid's gonna help with cleanup and organization," Tank explaining. "Show him what needs doing." Jake handed Dylan a push broom. "Start with the floors. When you finish, I'll teach you how we sort parts." Dylan swept like his future depended on it, methodical and thorough, reaching corners that probably hadn't seen attention in months. Jake pretended to focus on his engine work, but noticed how the kid didn't cut corners, didn't complain, just worked with the kind of focus that came from understanding that opportunities were rare and precious. After 2 hours, Jake called him over. "You know anything about engines?" Dylan shook his head. "They're like puzzles. Every piece has a purpose, a place where it belongs. Respect the machine, and it'll run forever." He pulled out a box of mixed bolts and washers. "These got knocked over yesterday. Sort them by cheese and type." Dylan sat cross-legged on the concrete, creating neat rows with precision that surprised Jake. His hands moved with natural confidence, organizing chaos into order. "Your dad teach you to work with your hands." Dylan's organizing stopped for just a moment. "He used to fix cars. Before he left." Jake heard the careful editing in that statement, understood that some stories came out in pieces, when trust had been earned rather than demanded. "Well, if you want, I can teach you some real skills. How to read an engine, how to diagnose problems, maybe even how to rebuild one someday." Dylan's eyes lit up with the kind of hunger that came from years of being told he wasn't worth investment. "Really? Long as you keep showing up and working hard." Big Bear emerged from the office, moving with surprising quiet for such a massive man. "Heard you walk home down Oak Street," he said to Dylan. "I'm headed that way. Walk with you." Dylan tensed immediately. "You don't have to." "Didn't ask if I had to." Big Bear's voice was gentle but firm. "Grab your stuff." They walked in comfortable silence for several blocks, Big Bear's presence somehow making the familiar route feel safer. "How's school?" he asked eventually. Dylan shrugged. "It's fine." The non-answer spoke volumes to a man who'd spent years trying to connect with his own lost son. As they approached Oak Street, Dylan's pace slowed unconsciously. Through the windows of the yellow house, they could see movement, a large figure pacing back and forth with agitated energy. That your foster dad, Big Bear, already knew the answer. "Yeah, Tim?" Dylan's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "He gets angry when I'm late." Big Bear watched the teenager's body language transform as they drew closer to the house, shoulders curling inward, head dropping, hands disappearing into pockets as if he was trying to make himself smaller. "Dylan," Big Bear said quietly, stopping a house away. "If things ever get really bad, you call this number." He pressed a business card into Dylan's trembling hand. "Day or night, someone will answer." Dylan stared at the card like it was written in a foreign language. "Why are you helping me?" Big Bear's throat tightened with memories of his own son, lost to a system that never saw past the surface. "Because you asked for work instead of a handout. That takes real strength. People with that kind of courage deserve folks who got their back." Dylan nodded slowly, tucking the card deep into his pocket like a talisman. "Thank you." Big Bear waited until the boy disappeared inside before walking away, his hands already reaching for his phone. The call to Tank was brief and urgent. "It's worse than we thought. House feels wrong, and the kid's terrified." "I know." Tank's voice came back hard as steel. "We're going to document everything. build a case, and if the system failed like it had failed so many others, they'd handle it their own way. 3 weeks into the rhythm of work, Dylan had found something he'd never experienced before. Not safety exactly, but its distant cousin, the possibility that tomorrow might be better than today. His hands had earned new calluses from honest work, and Jake had taught him to read engines like stories written in metal and oil. Thursday evening found Dylan elbow-deep in sorting carburetor parts when the clubhouse door exploded inward with enough force to rattle windows. Heavy footsteps echoed through the main room, followed by a voice that made Dylan's entire body freeze with terror. "Where is he? Where's my boy?" Tom. Martinez stood in the doorway between clubhouse and garage, 6'2" and furious. His work shirt stained and untucked, broken capillaries across his nose speaking to years of hard drinking. Rage simmered in bloodshot eyes as he spotted Dylan crouched beside Jake's workbench. Jake instinctively stepped between them, wrench still gripped in his hand. "Can I help you with something?" "You can mind your own business," Tom snarled. "That's my foster kid, and he's coming home right now." Dylan couldn't move, couldn't breathe. His chest tightened as familiar panic flooded his system, the same terror that came every time Tom's voice rose above normal conversation. Tank emerged from the office with the deliberate calm of someone who'd faced worse threats than an angry drunk. "Mr. Martinez, Dylan's shift ends at 6. It's 5:30. I don't give a damn about his shift. He's got responsibilities at home. Real work." Tom's voice carried the particular edge that Dylan knew preceded violence. "And I didn't give you permission to be here," filling his head with ideas. Tank took one measured step forward. "Actually, his caseworker approved the work program. I have the documentation if you'd like to see it." The lie came smoothly, delivered with military confidence that made Tom hesitate. Behind Tank, Big Bear and 3 other club members had materialized, forming a wall of leather and muscle. The message was clear without being spoken. "This is bullshit," Tom spat, but some of the fire was guttering out as he counted odds. "You people think you can just take in strays, make them think they're special. Kids got chores, responsibilities." "What kind of responsibilities?" Tank's voice could have cut glass. "Specifically," Tom's face flushed darker. "That's between me and him." Tank took another step forward. "Because Dylan shows up here with fresh bruises every few days. His caseworker hasn't visited in months, and he flinches every time someone raises their voice. So I'm real curious about these responsibilities." "You don't know what you're talking about." Tom's hands curled into fists, but even drunk and angry, he could recognize a losing position. "Kid's clumsy, falls down, and maybe if he wasn't such a..." He caught himself, jaw snapping shut on words that would have revealed too much. "Such a what?" Tank's voice was deadly quiet. Tom pointed at Dylan, who remained frozen beside the workbench. "He's home in 1 hour. Don't make me come back." He turned and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to make the frame shudder. The garage stayed silent for long moments after his departure. Dylan stared at his hands, which shook despite his efforts to control them. Jake crouched beside him. "Hey, you're safe. He's gone. I should go home," Dylan whispered. "If I'm not there by 6. "Not yet." Tank was already pulling out his phone. "Big Bear, get over here now." 20 minutes later, Big Bear walked Dylan home while another club member followed on his motorcycle, circling the block slowly, making his presence known. When they reached the yellow house, Tom was visible through the front window, pacing and drinking straight from a bottle. "You don't have to go in there," Big Bear said quietly. "I do." Dylan's voice was flat, emotionless. "If I don't, he calls my caseworker, says I ran away. Then it's a group home, and those are worse." "How do you know that?" "Because I've been in 3 of them already. This is number 4. After this, they stopped trying to place you." Dylan managed a weak smile that was somehow worse than tears. "It's fine, I'm used to it." Something cracked inside Big Bear's chest as he watched this teenager accept cruelty as normal, expected. Deserved. Kid. Thanks for the jump, Dylan interrupted. It's been the best part of my life. He walked to the door, and Big Bear had to physically stop himself from grabbing the boy and putting him on the back of his bike. The moment Dylan disappeared inside, Big Bear was on the phone with Tank. We're out of time. That bastard's going to seriously hurt him. And soon. Understanding how foster systems can fail vulnerable youth remains one of America's most urgent challenges, requiring communities to step up when institutions fall short. The investigation moved with surprising speed once Maria Santos got involved. Tank's contacted Child Protective Services, a sharp-eyed woman who owed him favors from their shared military days. Fast-tracked Dylan's case the moment she saw the photographs Big Bear had been quietly documenting. Fresh bruises appearing with alarming regularity. The way Dylan held his left arm protectively, the split lip that hadn't been there the previous Thursday. But it was the deeper digging that broke everything wide open. Maria's research into Dylan's background revealed inconsistencies that made her investigative instincts scream. Tom Martinez's story about finding an abandoned baby at a gas station had never been properly verified. The missing person report for Jennifer Brooks, Dylan's biological mother, had been closed within 48 hours with barely an investigation. Someone made her disappear, Maria told Tank during their meeting at Santos Family Diner, her voice shaking with controlled rage. And I'd bet my career Tom Martinez knows exactly what happened. She spread documents across the sticky table. Jennifer Brooks worked as a volunteer counselor at an LGBTQ youth center in San Bernardino. She was 19 when she had Dylan, unmarried, but according to friends, devoted to her son. Tank studied the photographs of a young woman with Dylan's intelligent eyes and determined jawline. What's the connection to Martinez? That's where it gets interesting. Tom works security for several facilities in the area, including a place called New Horizons Family Therapy. It was shut down 5 years ago for practicing conversion therapy on minors. Maria's finger traced a timeline on her legal pad. Jennifer was vocal about protecting LGBTQ kids. Tom was paid to keep them in line. She threatened to expose what was happening there. The emergency hearing was set for Friday morning. Dylan had no idea about any of it until Big Bear appeared at the Yellow House at 7 sharp, his motorcycle idling at the curb like a promise of rescue. Where are we going? Dylan asked, confusion written across his face as he climbed onto the back of Big Bear's bike. Tom watched me from the porch with eyes like flint, but said nothing. The club's presence had been felt all week, motorcycles appearing and disappearing from Oak Street like metallic guardian angels. Courthouse, there's someone who needs to talk with you. Dylan went rigid. About what? About whether you want to keep living in that house. The courthouse felt like a cathedral of justice and second chances. Dylan sat in the witness chair, small hands folded in his lap, as Maria presented evidence that painted a picture of systemic failure and willful blindness. Medical records from school visits, testimony from teachers who'd seen things but never reported them, photographs that documented a pattern of escalating violence. When the judge asked Dylan where he wanted to live, his answer came without hesitation. With the Iron Angels, they're the only ones who ever gave me a choice. The words carried the weight of 17 years spent having decisions made about him, around him, but never with him. Judge Patricia Hernandez, a woman who'd presided over too many broken children, granted emergency temporary guardianship to Bobby Williams pending background checks and home evaluation. Tom Martinez was escorted out by 2 bailiffs, his shouts about rights and lawyers echoing down marble hallways. Dylan didn't look back once. That evening, as the club worked together to prepare a bedroom in the storage room behind the office, Dylan met Alex Rodriguez, Tank's nephew visiting from UCLA. At 19, Alex carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd found his place in the world after years of searching. His easy smile and paint-stained fingers spoke of art classes and activism, of late-night discussions about identity and belonging. So you're the kid who walked into a biker bar asking for work, Alex said, grinning. That's either really brave or really stupid. Probably both. Dylan admitted, surprised to find himself smiling back. Best decisions usually are, Alex replied, and something in his voice made Dylan wonder if they were talking about more than just asking for jobs. Later that night, as Dylan lay on his new bed surrounded by the distant rumble of motorcycles and the unfamiliar safety of being wanted, he thought about the diary Maria had shown him, his mother's handwriting filling pages with dreams of a better world for kids like him, kids who didn't fit the mold but deserved love anyway. If you're reading this, the last entry had said, find people who see your light instead of trying to dim it. He'd found them, or maybe they'd found him. Either way, Dylan Brooks was finally home. When society fails its most vulnerable children, communities must choose between looking away and stepping up to create the families these young people deserve. 6 months later, Dylan Brooks stood in the garage that had become his sanctuary, teaching a newer kid the basics of engine maintenance. The bruises had faded, replaced by muscle earned through honest work and meals that came without fear attached. His bedroom walls were covered with acceptance letters from 3 different colleges, each one offering scholarships that would have been impossible without the grades he'd earned once survival was no longer his primary concern. Alex Rodriguez had become more than just Tank's visiting nephew. Their friendship had deepened into something tentative and wonderful, marked by shared sketches and long conversations about futures that suddenly seemed possible. The first time Alex kissed him, under desert stars during a club camping trip, Dylan understood what his mother had meant about finding people who saw his light. Tom Martinez had been charged with second-degree murder in Jennifer Brooks's death, along with 12 counts of child abuse spanning multiple foster placements. The evidence Maria had uncovered painted a picture of systematic exploitation that had gone undetected for over a decade. Susan Martinez had finally found the courage to testify, revealing her own years of silent suffering and fear. The Iron Angels had formalized their youth outreach program, creating safe spaces for kids aging out of foster care. Dylan served as a peer counselor, helping other teenagers navigate the gap between surviving and thriving. His story had become legend in certain circles, proof that family wasn't about DNA but about choice and commitment. On this particular evening, as the California sun painted the garage in golden light, Dylan found Tank working on his vintage Harley. Remember when you asked me what kind of work I was looking for? Tank looked up, oil-stained hands pausing on chrome. That was a lifetime ago. I said I wanted to prove I was worth something, Dylan continued. But that wasn't really true. I was looking for people who'd see me as worth something already. Tank set down his wrench, understanding the weight of what Dylan was really saying. Your mom would be proud, not just of who you've become, but of who you always were. Dylan nodded, thinking of the scholarship letter in his pocket, the one that would take him to UC Riverside to study social work in the fall. Alex had already promised to drive up from UCLA every weekend, their relationship growing stronger with every mile they planned to bridge. I'm not going to forget, Dylan said quietly. When I have my degree, when I'm working in the system, I won't forget what it feels like to be invisible. Big Bear emerged from the office, followed by the newest arrival, a 15-year-old girl whose story echoed Dylan's in painful ways. She clutched a backpack like it contained everything she owned, because it probably did. Dylan walked over, extending his hand with the same gentle confidence Tank had shown him that first day. I'm Dylan. You hungry? We were just about to order pizza. The girl's eyes filled with desperate hope, the same expression Dylan had worn when he'd pushed through these doors asking for a chance to prove himself. Some circles closed in the most beautiful ways. As evening settled over Riverside and motorcycles rumbled to life in preparation for the night ride, Dylan understood that healing wasn't a destination, but a journey shared with people brave enough to choose love over fear. Sometimes the family you build is stronger than the one you're born into. When have you had to choose between staying safe and asking for what you deserve? Share your thoughts below and subscribe to Heart Stories for more real journeys of courage, healing, and the power of chosen family.